And there we go. So good afternoon and welcome back to the afternoon session for the Maui Nembutsu seminar. We're here live with Bob Oshita, Reverend Bob Oshita, and Reverend Patti Oshita. And this is session 3. This is Jodo Shinshu for temple leaders. If you are part of temple leadership, you know that leading a temple is a thankless job. You're expected to do everything, and nobody ever says thank you or please. And I can tell you from personal experience that leading a nonprofit organization, which is it's all volunteers, is very different than being an executive in a corporation where you actually have authority and you can affect people's lives directly. So I'm hoping that Reverend Bob and Reverend Patti, because obviously you couldn't do this without having temple leaders who supported you and encourage your activities. So I'm hoping in this session you can provide some ideas and insights that would be helpful for temple leadership. Reverend Bob, if you will continue.
Okay. Thank you very much, Reverend Carey. Let's see. Nembutsu and temple leadership. When I was just thinking about leadership in general, I thought of a reflection that Patti and I shared when we were at the assembly, and I'd like to maybe open with that. But before I do that, explain that we used to close each reflection saying Namo Amida Butsu with kindness and gratitude beyond words. That we, as the quote that Reverend Carey shared in the very beginning, I said that we have to make Jodo Shinshu immediately relevant. It has to communicate immediately. If we hear something and we have to think about it, then it's lost. When we hear something, it has to go directly to our hearts and connect with our minds. That there's no needing to decipher and think about it. So we would end with saying Namo Amida Butsu, but anytime we use a phrase that's different, we have to define it. And so we would follow Nembutsu with its definition that we use, with kindness and gratitude beyond words. We would say Namo Amida Butsu with kindness and gratitude beyond words. And later I will get into explaining why we use that and where it came from. But if you'll join me in a moment of reflection, again, I'd like to share this one with you. It is interesting that Confucius said, one who wishes to teach or to lead others should play music for 4 hours a day. It is also said that the historical Buddha would engage in solitary meditation for 4 hours a day. And interestingly, Archbishop Desmond Tutu began each day with 4 hours of quiet prayer. Whether it is playing music, meditating, or praying, these spiritual masters encourage the need to engage in calming self-reflection to help remain centered. In trying to play music, we naturally reflect on how we feel. It is impossible to play when we are angry or preoccupied. So too is it impossible to meditate or pray when we are upset, distracted, or unfocused. The greater the responsibilities of leadership, the more there is a need for deep and quiet reflection in each day. Remembering again the humility it takes to truly lead, let us all embrace our responsibilities of leadership with daily reflection. Whether it is with music, meditation, or prayer, self-reflection can help keep us focused and undistracted as we continue to try to set the bar of leadership high. Namo Amida Butsu, with kindness and gratitude beyond words. So this was our message to the State Assembly one February morning. And when I thought about temple leadership, conversation came to mind that I had with Reverend Yukawa. We used to have many, many conversations, and so many are they remain with me. But Reverend Yukawa would say that the temples make the minister. Hmm. Temples make the minister. And I think it goes both ways. The minister makes the temple. Temples make the minister, and the ministers make the temple. Uh, and uh, if we go to different temples, whether it's on the mainland or in Hawaii, each temple has its own unique personality. Each one is different. Each one has a completely different feel to it, and uh, this is the personality of the members and the minister. Minister gives a certain uh, style of making the temple what it is, and the temple really helps to make that minister a better minister. Uh, I have a number of examples, but the one that came to mind is, I when I would under Oguri Sensei when he was bishop, I was fortunate. The only time I was very active, or I was active with national leadership, national BCA, but uh, he would ask us to sometimes do orientation for ministers who are uh, coming to take it before they take a temple, whether they're from Japan or whether they're from here in the United States and the mainland. Uh, we would do orientation, and one of the questions I would ask is, "What kind of minister do you want to be?" Uh, and I give them a choice. Do you want to be respected, or do you want to be loved? And I said, if you want to be respected, then you will work hard to develop this image that you're knowledgeable and you know what you're doing and you're capable. But I would also share with them that between the two, I'd rather be a minister that's going to be loved, because if you have membership and leaders in your temple that care for you, they're going to protect you and protect you even from yourself. And this example came to mind that once after our temple and district hosted the national council meeting, uh, I was furious about the hypocrisy of some of the things that I saw in a few of the leaders and ministers, and I wrote this letter. I outlined drafted a letter, saying this is unacceptable, and and then my temple president would happen to come into the office, and I said, "Oh, you're here. It's very good." And we talked together, and he agreed with me totally. He said, "Yeah, that was really that wasn't right, and yeah, that's." And I told him, "Well, I'm drafting a letter now, so I'd like you to sign it too if you agree with this." So I drafted this whole letter. I mean, detailing, getting it all out, how I felt, all of uh, my thoughts about the hypocrisy and just venting. And then I signed it and I brought it into the other office where he was sitting around talking with the staff. And asked him to read it, and then he said, "Oh yeah, this is a good letter." And Patty was there too. And then I said, "Okay, well, I'll sign it, and then we'll have the office staff send it out." So he signed it in front of me, and then he gave it to the secretary, and then I went back to my office, and I was working, and I think it was a couple of days later. Patty said to me, he said, "You know that letter that you wrote and you had Wayne sign?" And then I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, after you left the office, you know, Wayne told the secretary, you know, just throw that letter away." And when she told me that, I went, "What?" I put a lot into that letter, and we both agreed it should be like that. And he said, "Just throw it away." And then I said, "Why?" And Patty said, "Because Wayne's protecting you from yourself." Uh, He's protecting you from yourself. He goes, he totally agrees with you, and he lets you know that. But this is not necessary. You don't have to put it all on the line for this. And I thought about it and immediately knew she was right, and they were right. And I thought it's much better to be a minister that your members and your leaders care about than one who they just respect. And so, um, thinking about leadership, uh, for me, it's really always keeping in mind that the my members and the leaders of the bed scene have really nurtured me. The children have nurtured me. The families have nurtured me. People have invited us into their lives in some of the most difficult times, and they have all nurtured me. They've nurtured us, and uh, what we do is our trying to give back. Um, and so it takes it. The old slogan, "It takes a village," to raise a child. We are all interconnected in one, and we need to always keep that in mind in helping each other to become, as a lot of people use the phrase now, the best versions of ourselves. So, yeah, as temple leaders, I thought if we're going to talk about temple leadership, one of the things that I asked our board of trustees to begin doing, because when we first came there, Sacramento had a very active board of trustees, and but very very involved in all dimensions of the temple, but very few were coming to Dharma school. And so I asked them, if they can, at least once in a while, come to Dharma school and see what we're doing, see what's happening there, and so you know what you're supporting, and you'll know what we're trying to accomplish. And uh, slowly began to come. And in time, I think, we would look out there regularly and see um, really the vast majority of our board members would be there and families. And so it became easier to work together as a team because, they're helping you, and you're helping them by just doing your best. And we have to do it. We have to do it together. And I wanted them to come because we all have to hear the Dharma. We all have to understand what is it we're trying to teach. Uh, and temple leaders, temple members. I think maybe in Hawaii you might have this feeling too, but often here in on the mainland, people would say BCA temples are very cold. They're very cold. New people come and they're very rarely welcomed warmly. And I would hear this so often. And then I thought about it and felt that, no, we have some of the warmest, kindest, most generous, giving members you could ask for. And yet, when new people do come curious about Buddhism, there's not a welcoming feeling. And I realized again, it's like, what I felt when I was in college in that class, that our members, for the most part, you know, they're uncomfortable with new people coming because they might be asked a question. What if they ask me, what is that? What's going on? What are you chanting? What are you saying? Why are you burning incense? And uh, if you get asked a question, it becomes very awkward. So we need for our members and our leaders to really feel comfortable and in their understanding of the Dharma, so that when someone asks them a question, they're happy to answer. They have a response. There's something that they can say and know that this is how they feel. So um, having our leadership participate, especially in the Dharma activities, I think is a part of growing a temple, making it harmonious and cohesive. Uh, and so, with that in mind, I thought I would actually do a mini version of teaching my Metta Padma class. And so, Patty, if you'd help me with the getting that part of the screen.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, so I feel this is really essential in, well, of course, in being a minister, but in being a temple leader and just a active member. And we have to, if we're a part of a Buddhist temple, what is it? What is Buddhism? And so this is, again, I want us to all maybe quietly tap in to that 9-year old that lives within us. And imagine being in this class with your fellow 8, 9, and 10-year olds. And the two things that we would teach that essentially this is the beginning and the end of the class: impermanence and interdependence. All things are constantly changing, yet everything is one. And I would tell the kids, if you remember nothing else, remember this. You remember absolutely nothing else in the class, remember this. And then I would add, and if you don't know this, if you don't remember impermanence and interdependence, there's absolutely no way you're going to pass this class. And it's simple enough. All things are constantly changing, yet everything is one. And eventually, we will talk about impermanence and interdependence and change and oneness, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, Middle Path. And uh, when we get to the point of introducing Jodo Shinshu, the question then becomes, as I mentioned earlier, how do we tie and maintain the tie of Jodo Shinshu to essential Buddhism? Again, essential Buddhism, the teaching of impermanence and interdependence. So, what do impermanence and interdependence have to do with Amida? And the answer is everything. Impermanence and interdependence had everything to do with Amida. Okay? So, impermanence is the seed of wisdom or understanding. The people that are familiar with how I would teach was that I rarely tried or avoided, actually, as much as I could, using the words wisdom and compassion because they're huge words. I mean, unapproachable words. We know what they mean, kind of, but if someone were to say to you, "Are you capable of wisdom?" I think most of us would say, I don't know about that. I'm not a Buddha. But if they asked, "Are you able to understand?" Uh, I think we would say, "Yeah, I can understand." And interdependence, is the seed of compassion. Yeah. But compassion too. Are you capable of compassion? I don't know. But can you care? I can care. Of course I can care. So impermanence, understanding impermanence is the seed of understanding life. That everything is constantly changing. Nothing is forever. And then I would explain to the kids, this isn't for you to believe. Nothing in Buddhism is taught for you to believe. Impermanence is not a teaching that I'm sharing with you for you to believe. Everything in Buddhism is taught for us to test. Is everything impermanent? Well, let's think about it. Let's examine it. Let's think. Just look around and see. Is there anything that really stays the same, unchanged? And then the second part, interdependence, is the seed of compassion. When we feel we're connected, we care. Huh? When we feel we're connected, we care. When we realize that we're not separate, we care. We care about our families because we're connected. We care about our temple and our community because we're connected. Our sangha, we're connected. But more than this, we're not separate from others We're not separate from the environment or the earth. We are not separate from the sun and the moon. The moon circling the earth, uh, it it provides the tides and keeps everything in a kind of harmonious balance. And the sun, 93 million miles away, sheds us life-giving warmth upon the earth. And if the sun, 93 million miles away, suddenly turned off, within minutes the earth would begin to cool, and life as we know it would cease to exist. So interdependence, seeing that we're connected to the earth and the sun and the moon and the environment. If we knew our interconnections, how could we ever abuse it? How could we not but care about it? So understanding interdependence is the seed of compassion, of caring. And impermanence, understanding that, is the seed of wisdom. So these two things will come back to again and again. I would tell the kids everything comes back to impermanence and interdependence. And then we had this little formula we came up with: I plus I equals LOG. That if we understand impermanence and interdependence, we begin to live a life of gratitude, a life of gratitude. Namo Amida Butsu, life of gratitude. And Namo Amida Butsu is a life centered on I and I. A life centered understanding impermanence and interdependence is understanding Amida is a life of gratitude. And let's see, nothing else coming up here, Patty. Oh, oh, here it is. Okay. So I would explain, this is always kind of fun to do. Okay, we just talked about Nembutsu being a life of gratitude. What is the opposite of Namo Amida Butsu? And then I would tell the kids, the opposite of Namo Amida Butsu is Namo Mi. That every time we think about the three poisons, every time we become angry, we feel greedy or angry, or when we forget the realities of impermanence and interdependence, when we ignore the realities of life, then we're taking things for granted and thinking only Namo Mi, Namo Mi. So I would tell them every time, if I'm driving and I get upset, oh, that guy cut me off, and I'm getting upset about it. I'm thinking, what I'm saying is Namo Mi, Namo Bob, Namo Bob. I'm not thinking Namo Amida. So maybe they're they're in a hurry, someone is hurt, having to think about others instead of just myself. So the opposite of Namo Amida is, we would say in our class, Namo Mi. It's a question I would ask them on their tests too. So these are the three things that were taught when the Buddha first shared the Dharma at the deer park with the turning of the wheel of the Dharma. He taught middle path, Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. Okay. Now, I always started with the Four Noble Truths because the middle path is so amazing. I save it for the end. So the Four Noble Truths, as I mentioned to the kids, I would tell them life is tough, and they would say, "Yeah, I get it." Even if they're young, I get it. Life is tough, and life is tough because we're selfish, self-centered. We want our way. We're thinking Namo Mi, Namo Mi. The way to make life not so tough: don't be selfish. And the way to help us not be selfish, in other words, not be selfish, think of others, live a life of Nembutsu. The way to help us not be selfish: follow the Eightfold Path. So that's the Four Noble Truths, leads us then to the Eightfold Path. Right view, right knowledge or understanding, right thought, speech, and action. I would cover those first four together. That the Buddha knew that it's hard to become uncentered on ourselves. So we have to have right view of life. Then our thought, speech, and action will follow. And then use examples. And one of my, let's see, an example I might use is, since we're in Sacramento, the Sacramento Kings are playing the Los Angeles Lakers, and it's in the fourth quarter. Just 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 9 seconds left. Kings are down by 2. They get the ball out. They take a timeout. Take the ball out at midcourt, and then looking at the clock, it's 4 seconds left. They inbound the ball, and and De'Aaron Fox throws up a 3-pointer, a Hail Mary 3-pointer from near the half court line, and swoosh goes right through the nets. 3 points. Kings win by 1 point. The buzzer. Crowds going wild. Everyone's standing and cheering and screaming, but the guy sitting in front of you stands up and he throws both arms in the air and he's yelling, "Touchdown! Touchdown! Yes!" And you're thinking, idiot, where is this guy? Does he understand basketball? My goodness. And this is the example of understanding, having right understanding, knowledge, and right view. If we don't have the right view, we don't have understanding and knowledge that's correct, then everything that we think, everything we say, and everything that we do, our thoughts, our speech, and action are going to be wrong, be inappropriate. We'll be yelling touchdown at a basketball game. But for Buddhism, what is our understanding? What is it that we're supposed to view so that our thought, speech, and action will follow? And very simple, as I mentioned a few times already, everything comes back to the 2 eyes of impermanence and interdependence. If we have the view and understanding that all things are impermanent and yet all things are interconnected in one, if we know this, then everything that we think and say and do will follow, will naturally follow. It's interesting that this Patty and I took her parents. We would vacation together for a number of years. Patty's dad was he grew grapes in Fowler, and he had acres and acres of vines around their house. And one year he didn't have to grow a crop because he put his name in a lottery. There was an excess of crops, and so he would get allotted a certain amount for not growing that year. He did not have to grow. So his friends are all telling him, "You should go on vacation, go somewhere," because farmers just don't want to travel. They're really so caring about their crops, their livelihood. And so we took Patty's mom and dad to on one of our trips to New York City, and it was a warm, muggy August, overcast kind of time. I remember even flying there. Our flight was delayed because the weather was so intermittently cloudy and overcast. And when we were leaving the hotel, I remember I asked the concierge to double check our reservations for this restaurant. One of our goals was, Patty and her mom especially were fans of the Iron Chef show that Japan was broadcasting at that time, and we wanted to go to Iron Chef Morimoto's restaurant, and it was backlogged for months, but we got reservations for that one evening. And so I asked the concierge to confirm that we had that, and then for that night. And then he said, "Well, where are you going today?" And I told him, "Well, it's kind of kind of a shopping kind of day." And he said, "Well, if you have a chance, you should go to the World Trade Center. It's amazing. Go to the top of the World Trade Center." So we said, "Yeah, okay, we'll do it." So we actually went to the World Trade Center, took a cab there, and then when we got out, we looked up at the building, and it was so overcast. I think we could see maybe 5 or 6, 7 stories up, and then it was just fog and clouds. and drizzling rain. And we could see in granite big letters World Trade Center. I took a picture of that. And then we went to Bloomingdale's and other places. When we got back to the hotel, the concierge was there and he came running up to us and he said, "Did you go to the top of the World Trade Center?" And he was so excited for us. And I said, "No, no, we did go there, but it was so cloudy that and we thought no use going up." And he said, "Oh no, these kinds of days are the most amazing because you go to the top and then you're looking down on the tops of the clouds, and all around you there are these clouds, and then you see the tips of buildings coming up here and there." And he said, and it's an amazing view. And I said, oh, and he said, "Well, maybe tomorrow." And I said, "No, we're leaving tomorrow." So I told him, "Well, maybe next time we're in New York, I'll go, for sure. We'll go next time for sure." And then we left. And I think everyone knows what happened on 9/11 of, of that year. We're sitting at home watching the World Trade Centers fall. And clearly, see, when I said to him, "Next time, I'll see it next time," my I did not have right view. And my thoughts, my speech, my actions followed. That never really knowing truly, Ichigo Ichie, in one life, only this one opportunity, this one meeting, this one chance to do something. And my Dharma eyes were not open. I wasn't appreciating that time. But looking back now, I see, it's a perfect example of not having clearly an understanding that things might not always be here. Then what I thought, what I said, and how I acted, not not very Buddhistic. Huh? Then comes right livelihood. I mean, this is Eightfold Path shouldn't just be a list of things to remember. It should make sense. It should be something to go, duh, right? And right livelihood is for children. Uh, well, you have to get a good job. No, no. So I would teach it that right livelihood, it means to live well, to try to live the golden chain, to live being kind and gentle to every living thing, uh, to think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, to do pure and beautiful deeds. And the next one, number 6, right effort. The Buddha knew that it's hard. It's hard to keep right view. It's hard to think pure and beautiful thoughts and say pure. So we have to try. We have to try. We have to always give it effort. That's why effort is also one of the 6 paramitas, viriya, that we have to try. Trying is what it's all about. I think we don't think of effort as being, I mean, as important as it is, but it's one of the Eightfold Paths, one of the 6 paramitas, because we have trying is what it's all about. Practice, practice. So, and then right mindfulness, to try to live in the moment, to be in the moment. And then right meditation is to live with reflection. The reflection that I shared in opening, that uh, that Confucius would say, play music 4 hours a day, or Lao Tzu, or that the Buddha would meditate 4 hours a day, that Archbishop Desmond Tutu would pray in the morning 4 hours a day, that reflecting, constantly, always reflecting, who am I now? Who am I now? Because who we are is constantly changing. Everything is constantly changing. So knowing ourselves is a constant process. So reflecting is one of the Eightfold Path again, because it's so important. We need that in order to maintain our sense of who we are. That doesn't make sense, but maybe this might help. Uh, Shinrui Suzuki, who was the founder of the the Zen Center in San Francisco. Great stories I have of him. He and Ogui Sensei actually were very good friends. He was a wonderful teacher to Ogui Sensei, and uh, it's said that one of his quotes, Suzuki Roshi would say, um, "A life without self-reflection, a life without meditation, is like winding your watch without setting the time." Huh? And in the old days, we have to wind our watch every day for it to work. And Suzuki Roshi would say, a life without meditation, without self reflection, is like winding our watches without setting the time. It will run just fine, but it won't tell us anything. Huh? Isn't that great? It'll work just fine, but it won't tell you a thing. But self reflection helps us realize, who am I now? So when we reflect later, we can see who we were and who we are. Because pretty much we feel like I'm pretty much the same person I was yesterday. But if we look back and think in 5 year increments, who we were at 5 years of age, different than when we're 10 and 15 and 20, 25. And as we get older, we realize very different. And yet there's always a, the same thread of who we are going through it. And so self-reflection is a constant, lifelong process. So that's the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, as I would teach it to my 9-year-olds. Middle path, and as I mentioned, I saved the middle path for last because, to me, it makes more sense to teach it to the kids in this way. Okay, so middle path, obviously, considering the life of the Buddha, could take 24 meals a day or eat 1 grain of rice a day. But the middle path is in between. And everyone's middle path is different. But it's don't be a glutton, but don't starve yourself. Find your middle path. And then in terms of time, as I mentioned before in Courtney's book, in terms of time, one extreme is the past, the other is the future. And the middle path is now, the ever-changing present. It's the middle path in time. In terms of wisdom and compassion, it's both. Like compassion, if we live only with compassion, then it's insufficient. It has no focus. If we live only with wisdom, that too is insufficient. It has no life. So if we live only with wisdom, only with understanding, like everything is impermanent, everything is impermanent, everything is impermanent, that's all we understood without any compassion. If you meet someone and they say, "Oh, it's such a sad day. I lost my father. I lost my mother." And if you only have wisdom, your reply might be something like, "Well, everything's impermanent. You know, what do you expect?" That's wisdom only, no compassion. But if we only have compassion, then we have no focus. Our caring has no focus, and that too, to me, is dysfunctional. And I would tell the kids, and and the parents, especially the moms, they would say, "Oh no, I love this book," because I would use an example of compassion only. As there's a famous book, children's book called The Giving Tree. Are you familiar with The Giving Tree? Okay, if you're not, brief overview. It's a children's book about the relationship between a little boy and a tree, and the tree is it starts off, the boy loved the tree and the tree loved the boy, and he draws a heart in the tree and it says boy and tree, and at the end of every part of the story it says, and the tree was happy. The tree boy would come and play with it and climb in the branches, and the tree was happy. Then the tree didn't see the little boy for a while, and he came back a little older, and he looks sad. And the tree said, "What's wrong, little boy?" And the little boy says, "Oh, all my friends are going into town and they're doing things, but I have no money. I can't do things." And so the tree says, "Well, why don't you pick all my fruits, my apples, and take it into town and sell it? Then you'll have money." And so the little boy does this and goes into town and has fun. Then again, the tree doesn't see him for a while. And he comes back now a young man and again, not happy. And he says, uh, "Little boy, what's wrong?" And now the young man, little boy who's now a young man, says, "Oh, I have a girlfriend and we want to get married, and but I don't have a house." And so the tree says, "Well, why don't you cut down all of my branches and build a house?" And so you see the boy sawing off all the branches and carrying off all the wood, and as can only happen in a children's story in a fairy tale, with those branches he builds a home. And again, the the tree, it ends, and the tree was happy. The little boy took all the branches and the tree was happy. Then the next time he comes back, he's older man still, and again he looks sad, and the tree says, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Oh, my life, everything's gone sour, and I just want to get away. I wish I could just, float down that river, take a boat down that river, and get away from here. And but I don't have any means to get away." And the tree says, "Well, why don't you cut down my trunk and hollow it out, and you have a canoe, and you know you can get away from here." And so the little boy, who's now an older man, does this and floats away, and it ends, and the tree was happy, right? And then now it's just the stump, and the little boy comes back now an old man with a cane, and the tree recognizes him and so happy, and he says, "Oh, little boy, what's what's wrong?" And he says, "Oh, I'm just a tired man now, old man now." And the tree says, "Well, I don't have anything more to give you, but a stump, a tree stump is as good a place as any to sit down and rest." And so the old man that was once a little boy sits down on the trunk that's left of the tree, and that ends with the saying, the tagline, "And the tree was happy." Ah, I hate that story, because to me that shouldn't be called the giving tree. It should be called the enabling tree, or the stupid tree, because the tree had no wisdom. Uh, all it was doing was giving, 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 caring, 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 with no wisdom. And at the end of the story, was the boy, did he have a happy life? Did he have a fulfilled life? No, no. So we need both. We need not just wisdom and not just compassion. We need wisdom and compassion together. Okay? So, and this is Amida. Uh, on one end, we have Amitayus, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable caring. On the other end, we have Amitabha, infinite wisdom, uh, understanding that never ends. And understanding only is insufficient. Caring only is insufficient. We need both together. And Amida is wisdom and compassion. So, what does Amida have to do with impermanence and interdependence? Everything. Hmm. Because understanding impermanence is the seed of wisdom. Understanding interdependence is the seed of compassion. That is Amitayus. So, then in terms of this Buddhist teaching of non-attachment, uh, people would often hear the teaching of non-attachment and say, "Oh yeah, I know non-attachment. That means detachment." But no, non-attachment does not mean detachment. Non-attachment is non-attachment. The two extremes are attachment and detachment. Now again, you have to keep in mind, these are 9-year-olds, 8, 9-year-olds that are getting this, right? Right? They're being taught this. You see their eyes light up and they get it. And you have attachment on one end, detachment on the other. Non-attachment is the middle path, and the middle path is dynamic. It's not static. It's not a conclusion. It's like the ever-changing present that's now, constantly changing, ever becoming. Non-attachment is this. Okay, non-attachment is means it's both of these. Like I think as Buddhists, when we hear attachment, we think bad. We make a judgment call. Attachment, bad. Detachment, oh, that's wisdom. Must be good. It's no. Attachment and detachment, not good or bad. They're really they don't exist without each other. They have to be both. Non-attachment means holding on and letting go. Holding on and letting go. That you hold on and you become attached, but you in time have to let go. Life makes you let go. Life, in fact, is a constant process of holding on and letting go. Holding on and letting go. You love deeply, you care deeply, and you have to let go. Holding on and letting go. Many times with parents, I think they experience this. I think, let's see, what's my time like here? Okay, well, I think I'll come back to this if there's time. But life is holding on and letting go, and I think this is the beauty of Jodo Shinshu, is that we're not just wisdom only, and we're not just compassion only. You know, the beauty of Buddhism, because Buddhism is Jodo Shinshu. Jodo Shinshu is Buddhism. The beauty is that it's a process. It's a dynamic process of holding on and letting go, loving deeply and letting go, and yet knowing deep inside, deep inside, you know, when it comes to loving, we find never letting go, and yet letting go. Like parents, as their children grow up, you holding on, but you let go, but you're holding on, you're letting go. Inside, deep inside, never letting go. Even when we have to know loss in life, like the famous story of Kisagotami, she was holding on to her baby even after the baby died, and went to the Buddha and said, Buddha, can you help me? My baby has died. Buddha said, he didn't say, um, I'll bring your baby back to life. No, he said, I will try. Remember, effort again. I will try to help you. And then he told her, first, you have to bring handful of mustard seeds, handful of mustard seeds, but it has to come from a household that has never known death. And so he knew that Kisagotami, as a loving mother, holding on, so attached, unable to let go, caring so deeply, unable to face reality, she had to experience that loss is everywhere. And Kisagotami went to every household, and each place she went, asking for a handful of mustard seeds, and they could see that she's holding a baby that's no longer living. And they say, well, what do you need? What do you want? And they give her the mustard seed just to get rid of her, or they want to. But then she says, but has this household known death? And they said, yes, of course. My mother died, my father, my son. They each have known loss. And then she says, I can't take those mustard seeds. And she go on to the next household. Finally, exhausted, she came back to the Buddha and she said, I understand. I get it. I get it. This is life. And Kisagotami, holding on, was now able to let go, to realize this is life. But deep in her heart, always holding on. Always. Yeah. My mom and dad had their first child long before I was born. Uh, she only lived 15 minutes. I was able to later see her birth certificate and her death certificate. But I had an older sister that only lived for 15 minutes. And I realized that, you know, in talking with my mom near the end of her life, we were able to bring Emiko's ashes back from Iowa, and she held them so deeply, and she had just tears dropping from her eyes, able to say to mom, you know, Emiko ga kaite kita. And I could see, I could feel that mom and dad have always loved the four of the children they had. They were able to live. They always loved us for one more. Although they had to let her go, deep, deep, deep in their hearts, they were always holding on to her. As a, it was something that I'll always remember. So this is the middle path. This is life, holding on, letting go. Each time we breathe, it's holding on and letting go. We inhale, we're holding on. And when we exhale, we have to let go. Uh, Even if we want to, we have to let go in order to live. Life is constantly holding on and letting go. And this is what I would have on the board before we had PowerPoint. Oh, okay. This is this is a picture of the whiteboard in our classroom with the kids. And if you could see, what is Buddhism? The teaching of impermanence and interdependence. And interdependence is the seed of compassion, caring. Impermanence is the seed of wisdom. And Amitabha, Amitais together make Amida. And Amida, if you could follow this is the Namo Amida, which to think upon, be centered on wisdom and compassion, caring and understanding. And this Nembutsu is the essence of Siddhartha's enlightenment, the heart of Buddhism. So this is what their final exam board looks like. This would be our review week. So can you imagine? These are kids looking at this, and they look at it and they get it. This is not confusing to them. And it's just really, it was a delight. And really, I look back and think that was one of the maybe best things I ever did. So anyway, can I stop sharing now? Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is that just to really feel that how important and essential and everyday the Dharma is in our lives. The 9-year-old in each of us understands this. And in order to be effective temple members, leaders, and ministers, I think we have to work together to create an environment where people feel like, I get it, I get it. So, with that, let's see. Notes here. Okay. I think I'll leave it with this and maybe open it up for any comments or questions.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Reverend Bob. If anybody in the Zoom audience has a question, you can type it into chat, or just type us a note that you'd like to ask a question on camera, and we can certainly do that. So, Reverend Bob, I got a couple of questions coming out of your talk. So the Eightfold Path, you don't see that that's necessary to be a monk. Like you got to shave your head and then you can do the Eightfold Path.
That's interesting that Bhante Sila Vimala, he's a Sri Lankan monk in the Theravada tradition, very dear friend of mine. And we talked about this, and he said in the Sri Lankan tradition, where I was going, from right view down, he said we also go from meditation up. So the monks would go the opposite direction. So they would meditate, and meditate would then develop within them mindfulness. And then with mindfulness, they would then have the effort, to then live have a better life, huh? To live like the golden chain, and then their actions and their thoughts and their speech would follow, and they would have uh, very clearly an understanding of impermanence and interdependence. So uh, uh, the Eightfold Path, in terms of uh, being in a cloistered monastic tradition or in a Jodo Shinshi temple, I think either way, it's very important. I don't know. Did that respond adequately?
Yeah, it's just one of the questions that does come up every once in a while. That that the Eightfold Path of the Noble Ones, specifically is for the path of discipline. It's Theravada. You have to become a monk, and then all the monastic precepts fall into play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of traditional practice-based, give up everything is the first step. Compared to the fact that actually, none of us in Jodo Shinshu are monks. None of our temple leaders are shaving their heads.
Yeah, that's where I think what Bhante was telling me, in the monastic tradition, they would probably follow it more in reverse with the meditation, the mindfulness. But I feel that making the effort, is what's important, and we have to try to have right view, try to understand clearly. If we really understood that everything is impermanent, how could we take for granted anything? We would really appreciate every opportunity to be with those whose lives give meaning to our own. To know that if someone has shown us kindness, we should thank them right now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when we see them next, but because we understand, there's no guarantee. That thank them now, care for them now, hold them close now.
Thank you, Reverend Bob. I think that actually speaks to the point when you're talking about the middle path, that life is what's happening somewhere in between, holding on to things and then letting go. The social media, the Facebook version of Buddhism is just let it go. Just let go. Just let go. My favorite poster uses the profane word for doo-doo. Let that doo-doo go. And it's a picture of the Buddha, in meditation. And it's actually pretty close. The problem I had, you can actually find that online as a doormat. So you're coming up to someone's door and there's the Buddha. It's like, yeah, that's not. I didn't find that very amusing myself, but I thought it's just, that letting go. It's so easy. And much of Buddhist wisdom you see on social media is, you, Bob, you should let go. It's in the command form of the language, right? It's not about me. I should let go. I should try to let go. No, it's always telling the other person what to do. But anyway, I'll stop there. Any questions here? My phone, everyone's shaking their head. So, how about online? Do we have any online? I'm sorry, do we have online questions? Let's see. Okay. Let's see. This is from Mike Nishimoto, and Mike is saying, a minister suggested that the 6 paramita are more relevant to Mahayana Buddhism than the Eightfold Path. What are your thoughts?
Oh, my thoughts in general are, I try not to be too concerned with any lists, of 3 of these, 4 of those, 10 of those, more important to understand and have it become meaningful, like 4 noble truths. Does that get to a point where you really feel like this makes sense to me, and this is my life, this is me? And the Eightfold Path, yeah, this is me. The 6 paramitas has always been interesting because it's something to me that I would ask, like, people, what's your favorite of the paramitas? Huh? And it's interesting that people have a different one, and we gravitate for I think what we feel we need or we lack. And and I just as my take on it that if we find ourselves gravitating towards a specific paramita, that's something that we're lacking, and that's why we want to understand it more or focus on that. And I know when I asked Patty, I think yours is patience, right?
No,
Effort. What?
effort.
Effort. Yeah. Hers was effort. I asked Patty, what is her favorite or most meaningful paramita? And she said effort.
Mhm.
For me, it was wisdom. I thought prajna was always important because I lack it, so I have to focus on it more. So, but I think effort is really, and well, actually, the other way of looking at it too, the paramitas, they're not separate. They're they're if you focus on one and you truly really master one, you master them all. Uh, they're it's not like you have to go down a list of I have to master one of these, each of them at a time. Just whatever is your focus, try to master that as much as you can, and you're going to develop everything else. So um, anyway, at least that's my Ianjin view.
Well, it's also, I think, one of the things. It's not everybody, realizes that originally Mahayana was also for monks. That Mahayana tradition was practiced by monks until much later on. So it's actually kind of funny that it's Mahayana is for householders. It is historically, I suppose. But I keep coming to the conclusion. Well, Shimon tried it for 20 years, and he was much more dedicated than I am. And he couldn't do it, and he came to that realization, which leads to him going off to encounter the Nembutsu. So,
yeah, but that's something that I always felt like when I've heard some ministers say, well, meditation is not the way. I would say no. Shinran said meditation was not the way for him. You might be able to do it, but his I, again, I admire his humility and honesty that he would say, I can't do it. I tried and tried and tried. 20 years I tried. Can't do it. Can't do it. And I think people were drawn to him because of his honesty and genuineness. And to say, even the concept of like, jiriki tariki, just too much discussion about that. I think that I mean, what's interesting about the Jodo Shinshu folks would always say, Zen, that's that Jiriki school of Buddhism, that's South Power School. But when Ogui Sensei was invited, he might be the only uh, uh, Jodo Shinshu minister ever invited to speak at Eiheiji, the Soto Zen's headquarters, the main temple. And he spent time at Eiheiji, and when he was talking to the main teachers there, he said they were just like having tea and conversation. And one of them asked him, hey, what's up with all you Jodo Shinshu guys talking about, jiriki, 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 tariki, tariki, tariki. And then he said, there's no such thing as jiriki. Everything is tariki. And so when Ogui Sensei shared that with me, I had to laugh because that's what Jodo Shinshu says too. Zettai tariki. Everything's letting go. So I think to me, really understanding Zen, you become Jodo Shinshu. And if you really understand Jodo Shinshu, go all the way through. Go all the way through it, and you really appreciate Zen. It's really when we start to compare and do all this, and even breaking things up as jiriki tariki, we are falling into that thinking dualistically again. And that's one of the things that we're always encouraged to try to move beyond, to feel that oneness, to feel our interconnected oneness, that we have a shared human spirituality that we're all trying to tap into. I think there was a comment in the chat about well, maybe someone asked earlier, but about the feeling of wowness, the feeling, but uh, uh, we always we have to. How do I say this? Well, again, I guess just have to tap into that oneness, the dichotomy, is what we're trying to avoid, and that feeling of wowness. That's Tanisho 10, I think it is, right? That everything is beyond the words. There's nothing, nothing to say.
And yet Shinran goes on to use different adjectives like, the supreme.
Yeah, but
inconceivable.
yeah, and that's what's something else though that I always feel like the focus on Kyogyo Shinsho is that's wonderful, but Shinran didn't write Kyogyo Shinsho for everyday people to read. As I've been taught that Kyogyo Shinsho, Shinran wrote for scholars to defend Honen. Honen's position was being ridiculed, and well, Shinran began to write something to defend Honen, and showing that Honen's view is right out of mainstream Buddhism. So in Kyogyo Shinsho, he's quoting Daikyo, the largest sutra, quite a bit, and he's defending Honen. And Shinran lived and died a disciple of Honen. As far as Shinran was concerned, he was Jodoshu. He was a disciple of Honen Shonin. And if he came back and saw all this, he might say, "What the heck? What are you guys doing?"
Yeah, but Reverend Bob, my experience of trying to read the Kyogyo Shinsho, because you're supposed to, the collected works of Shinran in English, that it's interesting that his writings in later life, the Gutoku's Lamentations, when you read that, and he finds the exact words to describe himself, right? How lamentable, I teach only for fame and profit. Those lines, or that when I look at my heart, it's filled with snakes and scorpions. So he finds the words to describe himself in extraordinary detail, and then that has to fall back on metaphors and adjectives, superlatives when he's talking about Amida. Okay. Well, we've got 7 minutes left. Online audience, in-house audience, last chance to ask questions. If not, I would just say to do a little housekeeping for tomorrow. So Reverend Bob will be the guest speaker. He will be delivering the Dharma talk tomorrow for the service here at Makoa Honganji, which we will be live streaming. So if you tune into the temple website, makoahonganji.org, or if you go to Facebook, or if you go to YouTube and search for Makoa Honganji, the service will start live streaming at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then we'll be using, hopefully, we'll be pulling in Reverend Bob by Zoom into the live stream. And then at 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time, we'll come back for the final session, which would be session 4, and Jodo Shinshu for temple growth. So looking at the idea of taking, our religious mission as a temple, and it's a question that we always ask, and it always seems to come up. That's very interesting, Reverend Bob. How do I use that to grow my temple? And hopefully we'll have a discussion centered on that. So online audience, I'll give you one more chance to ask a question. Okay, in-house? Nobody, everyone say yes. Well, the Buddha never said that The brain can absorb only what the butt can endure. The Buddha never said that. But it's very true. Reverend Bob, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. And to the online audience and the in-house audience, thank you very much for joining us. We did have some hiccups involved with getting the link out to people. So if you know somebody who wanted to watch but didn't get the link or something, please share the link with them. Otherwise, thank you again, Reverend Bob.
Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, so let's just close the service. If everybody would like to join me in Dashko, let's recite Namo Amitabhatsu together. Namo Amitabhatsu.
Namo Amitabhatsu. Namo Amitabhatsu. Namo Amitabhatsu.
With kindness and gratitude beyond words. Namo. Very good. Thank you again, Reverend Bob, Reverend Patti. We'll see you tomorrow for the Dharma talk, and then at 11 o'clock Hawaii time for the last session of the Nembutsu seminar. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay well.
Bye.